Here we are, part two of how to use Revit well, the fundamentals. And these are going to show you the right way to use Revit, part two. Here we go. Hi, I'm Chris, the Saturday Architect, and I will help you run or contribute to a thriving architecture business. Let's go. While working in Revit, you will be most efficient when you use templates. Revit is front-loaded by design. This means that doing work ahead of time to set things up in ways that are not just unique to a project, but can be used in many different projects and many different families is going to benefit your time later down the road. Templates are fantastic because they basically get you ahead of starting from complete scratch. You can have a project template, which may be the one you're most familiar with. This means a .rte file. It has its own file type. You can also have family template files. These are files you can use to start making a family from that is not just from a blank canvas, a blank file. Rather, you can have some parts already built in, whether that's reference planes or actual objects, different extrusions and whatnot. And finally, there are view templates in Revit, another part of the project file, the .rvt file. These are ways to make it so different views, you can think of instances of views, to act similarly. So you can think similar to families. View templates are like a type level change. When you apply a view template to a bunch of different views and you change a setting in the view template, all of those views are going to have that change made. So for example, if you want walls to be shaded in on a certain type of floor plan, which you have multiple kinds of, so let's say first, second, third, and fourth floors, they're all architectural floor plans. And you want the walls to be shaded in on those floor plans. You can use a view template, and view templates have many different settings. One small setting within them is the shading within walls. You can then change that setting in a view template, and all four of those views will change how they look by that one change to the view template. So templates are an incredibly powerful way to use Revit, and indeed they are part of the correct way to use Revit. If you're not using templates with Revit, you're really not using Revit correctly. Another bit more specific and small part of using Revit that is still very powerful when you're using families, when you're particularly creating families, is the idea of nesting. A family file is meant to be loaded into a Revit project. Ultimately, that's the end point, the end destination for family files. However, a family file can also be loaded into another family file. For instance, if you want to create a family for an entry door, we'll go back to that example, then let's say you want the door swing in plan view to look a certain way. You can make a family for just the door swing in floor plan. Then you can load that effectively two-dimensional family into your door family, which has the three-dimensional components. So your trim, it's meant to be seen from the front, so it's got your hardware showing on it, any glazing, the panel, you get the idea. That two-dimensional simple family nested into the door family that will go into the Revit file itself, the .rvt file, that nested family is going to make the entry door a little bit more versatile in its use. It's also then available to be used in other door families. You don't have to just load that one door swing family into the entry door. You can load it into maybe a storage door or some other sort of swinging style door. So it increases the versatility of your family creation, and once again it's more efficient because it makes it so you don't have to make a brand new swing set of lines and other parts in each door family you make. It isn't only families that get loaded into project files. You can also put other Revit files into a Revit file. This is called linking Revit files. This is commonly done with different disciplines. So I regularly work with structural engineers, and any structural engineers who use Revit, who I work with, might send me a Revit file. That file then contains structural members. It does not contain the architectural parts. They don't have any windows, any doors, any roof, usually, in their files. My file has all of those things. Linking their file into mine then makes it so their objects are visible in my Revit file. And to some extent, I can pull information from them. What I cannot do is modify them. They are essentially a representation of what the structural file has. I cannot change where a beam or a column in a linked file is located, but I can show it in my drawings, and I can label it with tags. I can include information from them in schedules, so I can still use them. I can pull information from them, essentially, and I can display information about them, but I cannot modify their actual components. There are also ways to connect non-Revit files with Revit. These are more indirect ways, and primarily I have used Dynamo as the way to connect these things. So a classic thing that I've done is connected Excel files with Revit through Dynamo files. That's a whole different topic, but I just want to mention that there is a way to make it so non-Autodesk files can still have a connection in some fashion to your Revit file, to where you don't have to completely manually copy information from, let's say, an Excel file to a Revit file. Those then are the core of how to use Revit files well. When you keep these in mind and work with them rather than against them, you will be well on your way to becoming a Revit expert. What is one struggle you're facing with a tool or principle in Revit? Let me know in the comments below. Until then, take care.